We're live. Hello, hello, hello. I'm about a minute early, hoping to give people a chance to get on and join us, because today we're talking about, we're talking about no. Talking about hell no, but we're also just talking about no. Or the flip side, you could call it, we're talking about people pleasing. We're talking about how hard it can be sometimes to say no. But why? Why is it so hard? So I'm going to wait a minute. This time I decided, screw all the playing around with technology. I'm just going to do this from my phone and not worry about it. Because everything else is just a little frustrating to figure out. So I'm going to wait about a minute just in case, because I actually started on time, and anyone who actually gets on these calls probably isn't prepared for me to actually start on time. So I'll wait till like maybe 1:31, 1:32 at most, and then we'll get going. But it is nice to be able to just get on and go. I'm going to check and see so I can notice if there are comments and where they are, so that I'll be able to see when any of you do chime in. Because that's important to be able to see. And I've got notes kind of up and all over the place. So just FYI with that one. Checking some stuff. Making sure that I am live in the group. Yes, I am. Okay, cool. We are here. We are live in the group. That is great. So, say it like you mean it, embracing your hell no. So, I'm curious. Do you ever find yourself going out of your way to please others, even at your own expense? Do you ever find that you will neglect your own personal needs and maybe even walk all over your own boundaries just to maintain harmony in a situation? Do you have such a strong desire to avoid confrontation or conflict that you become overly agreeable or have like just really compliant behavior? Do you notice that you can excessively accommodate other people's needs or desires, and definitely over your own, which can often lead to that burnout or resentment? Have you been doing any or all of these things, or a combination of them, long enough that you've noticed a loss of a sense of self, a loss of your own identity, desires, needs, not even knowing what you truly want anymore? So I can say this was definitely me. It is something that I still have to overcome in certain environments. But I definitely was, very much so, all of these roles, and losing track of who I was. I was the person who would say yes to everything, especially in my old role at Vandegrift. I would very much say yes to everything I could say yes to. I would always make sure to put everyone else first, take all those things, get all those things done, take on all the roles, because it made me feel like I wasn't going to, it made me feel more valuable. And it felt safer. If I say yes to this, and if I do this, and if I do that, and I'm always doing these things, my job is safe. Which, not true. I mean, any job could not be safe at any moment. Those jobs may not even exist anymore. But I also experienced this in my family relationships. One in particular, where there was a lot of pushing aside who I know myself to be and showing up as who I thought I needed to be in that moment, to a point, though, of losing yourself and so wanting to avoid confrontation and please and experience love that I didn't even know who that person was that would show up in those family situations, because it was not me. So I know plenty of people who have sacrificed themselves, avoided conflict, who are consistently people-pleasing because it feels safer. So when we talk about embracing your hell no, it's not a simple topic. It's pretty complex. Saying no should be simple. Most people will say it is simple, but it's not easy because of the complexities behind why we tend to say yes. Saying that using the word no is easy is just a gross under-evaluation of what it takes to say no for most people, because there's so much stuff underneath the yes or the no and what we end up saying in those situations. So what I want you to know, I have my notes here, in all of the places. What I want you to know is that this need to constantly say yes, this difficulty with saying no, could be associated with a trauma response known as fawning. You've probably heard of fight and flight and freeze, but most people haven't yet heard of something called fawning, because it was more recently discovered and inserted as one of these other traumatic responses. Fight, flight, freeze, fawn was added in there around 2013, being fully recognized as another version of the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system responses to trauma. And it is specifically related to pleasing in a sense that feels safer. So when we look at fight or flight, freeze, let's break those down again just for those of you who don't know them, right? Fight is a sympathetic nervous system. Everything comes online. It's time to confront. It's time to fight, right? Flight, another sympathetic nervous system response, and this time it is to escape. Your body prepares to run, to get away from the tiger, right? Then we have freeze, which is the parasympathetic nervous response. It has everything shut down, right? This is where we become like in that almost disabled, immobile, disassociated state. And then we have fawning, which is actually a parasympathetic and a sympathetic response. It is a complex interplay between the two because we have both activation and submission at the same time. Let's give some examples here. Fight, right? When we know there's a bad situation and someone confronts us and everything, and we end up confronting, we fight out the problem, right? We fight back in the situation. Honestly, I could probably use I could use sexual assault for all of these, right? You fight back, you confront the situation and try to deal with it. The flight, you try to get away before the situation ever occurs. Freeze, that is when we've dealt with a lot of women where their eyes will gloss over and they'll just freeze. And if I just stay here, then at least I'll survive. But then there's fawning. And fawning is potentially, in my personal experience in my life, has been saying yes when I want to say no because that felt safer. So have there ever been times in your life where you wanted to say no and you knew you wanted to say no and everything in you wanted to say no, from something as simple as going to the grocery store with your significant other to some kind of assault, some kind of problem, where you knew you wanted to say no, but yes was safer? That is the bottom line of fawning. That's the basics. I am not going to get into the depth of it because it is a complex trauma response. This feeling that we have to say yes when we want to say no. And I am not just talking about women, and I am not just talking about women in sexual assault. I am talking about saying yes when we want to say no in so many places. Let's look at the identity structures from boss to employee, from parent to child, from significant other to other, from friend to friend, from authority to not authority, wherever it is. Where are those times when we want to say no, but we say yes? And what has us say yes? It could be as simple as, right, someone asking you if you want to come to a party. Really simple. You want to come to a party with me? And you're thinking, oh God, it's been a long week. It's been a long day. Like, I don't really feel like interacting with people. But then all these other thought processes and all these other things start to kick in that have you believing like, oh, but can I say no? Will they get mad at me? Will they reject me? Will they ridicule me for saying no? What will I have to deal with if I have to say no? Is saying yes easier than having to deal with all of the things I might have to deal with if I say no? Right? All the way up to those much more, let's call them traumatic responses, where we maybe have abuse, parent to child, or work situations, where we want to say no, but we say yes, because again, are the repercussions of no worse than what I might have to deal with if I say yes? And while we believe that the repercussions of no are more detrimental, scarier, harder, less safe than saying yes, the impact on our mental, our emotional, our body, our soul is so much more than we acknowledge often. Because we're not honoring ourselves. We're not honoring our own voice. We're not honoring our own desires, our wants, our needs. Because let's be honest, we live in a society where we're not really taught that what we want, we are allowed to have fully, authentically. We have all of these beliefs and structures and identities that say these shoulds and these woulds, and you should do this and you can do this, but could you do that? And would you do that? Like so many shoulds, woulds, and coulds of how we're supposed to show up versus how do we want to be? Maybe I don't want to do that. I say all the time, I'm a big believer that hustle culture is bullshit. I don't believe in hustle culture. It is not how my physiology works. So when it comes down to being invited to this, that, and the other, I'm checking in. Do I really want to do that? What do I want to do? What does my body want to do? But my question to you is do you know what your body wants to do? Do you actually know if you do or do not want to do something? Do you actually have enough awareness to recognize when it is a full body, hell no, I don't want to do that? And then do you have the wherewithal? Do you have the self-respect, the self-love? And that is a thing, to honor that and say, no, that's not okay. I don't want to do that. I'm not up for it. And without explanation. I think some of us can get to a point of I can say no when I don't want to do things. And how many of us can do it without having to give an explanation about it? Because no is no. It is a complete sentence by itself. It does not require explanation. Now, if someone asks for an explanation, fine. Maybe I'll choose to give them one. But when someone asks me something and I decide to say no, no thank you, I'm not interested, I don't want to, that's a complete sentence. I do not have to follow it with all of the reasons why and make it okay and justify the no. Again, part of overcoming the trauma response. When you are learning to say no, you may need to justify, you may need to acknowledge, you may need to put those out there at first to feel okay in your body, to feel safe enough to honor your no. And I say go for it, as long as you recognize where it's coming from. There could potentially still be a type of response happening physiologically in your body that doesn't feel safe enough to say no, so you've got to explain the no. And working towards getting to a point where you can say no and just say no. But to do that, we've got to start to get present. We have to start learning what a no actually feels like in our body. It's actually quite fascinating. If you yell with all of your might, a yes, a good yes, when you really want to say yes, and if you yell no to something you do not want to do and you are not up for that, that is a really fast way to notice what a yes and what a no actually feels like in your body. Go to the extreme, get it by yourself, get home in your car and just scream, no! And then pause and notice how it feels all throughout your body. Notice your thoughts, notice your sensations, notice your heart rate and your breathing, and notice what a no feels like. But then think about something that you really want to do, that you're really excited about, and scream that yes. And compare the sensations of the two. Notice the difference of the yes to the no and how they feel. And start paying attention, getting present to, being aware of how your body is reacting when someone is asking something of you that is going to require a yes or a no, a this or a that. Pause before giving a response, especially if all of the things I mentioned earlier are you. The people pleasing, the walking over the boundaries, the over accommodating to help keep harmony within the group. Notice, pause, take 5 seconds before you give your answer, so you have a chance to get present to what do I actually want to do. We had a participant in one of our courses who was definitely experiencing this on a heightened level, and we were talking to her about it, and we're bringing it up, and she's talking through us about some examples and this, that, and the other, and we're like, okay, from now on, for the next 24 hours, anytime someone asks you something, you have to stop and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on your hand visually, count out loud 5 seconds, and then answer. And it was really funny because we said that, we explained that, we talked about that, and like 2 minutes later, one of the other participants, they were friends, goes, hey, can I have your phone? And she immediately just goes, yeah, here. And it was like, whoa, like no pause, no thought, didn't even know why she wants her phone, just handed it over. Like that's the level of just where the people pleasing, where the yes syndrome, if you will, just becomes an automatic reaction without any presence. So from that point forward, we were all holding her accountable to, hey, pause, take 5 seconds, breathe. What do you want to do? Do you want to say yes? Do you want to say no? Do you need more information first? What is it going to take for you to be able to give a hell yes or a hell no? And we've got to pay attention because we live in this culture that is go, 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 go. I don't have time for you to slow down and think about what you want. Just tell me yes or no. Let's go, right? But you've got to slow down to know what your yes or your no actually is. Once you get present, once you can start paying attention to what a yes or a no actually feels like in your body, you can probably start to recognize some of your boundaries that you may not even be aware of. some of those things that actually matter to you, those things that are not okay, those things that are okay, those things that someone must never do, some of those things that people must always do, right? What are those things for you? So that you can know when you're not respecting your own boundaries, when you're overstepping for the possibility of acceptance, for the possibility of maintaining harmony, for the possibility of avoiding conflict, for the possibility of being valued versus actually wanting to do it. There's a difference, right? We've got to check in and notice, am I doing this because I want to do this, or am I doing this because it doesn't feel safe to say no, because I won't be accepted, because all of the things I just said? What is actually having me say yes or no in this moment? Because no can also be the opposite side of that trauma response, where it's a fuck you, no. And noticing that too. But we don't know if we don't slow down and pay attention to the thoughts we're having, to the images we're seeing in our brain. If like something pops up with this old memory, and noticing how our body is feeling and what we're experiencing in that moment, to be able to start stepping out of these old patterns of just saying yes when we don't want to. Awareness, and then finding out what your boundaries really are. In fact, I can support you with coming up with some of your boundaries. So if you would like that, I can send you an exercise. You're welcome to drop boundaries into the comments, and I will happily share that with you so you can find out what some of your boundaries might be that you're not even aware of. Because a lot of times we're not aware of all of the different boundaries we're dealing with. So just drop the boundaries in the comments if you want to find out what some of your boundaries actually are. So to recap, being able to honor your own hell no is going to require knowing what a no actually feels like. It's going to require you paying attention to when you're saying yes, and noticing if you're saying yes just because it's easier, or more importantly, because it's safer. And practicing the courage to honor your desires, wants, and needs. Because that stuff gets trapped all up in your body, you guys. It's going to create dis-ease and discomfort and pain in the body when we're constantly not honoring what our body wants, what our mind wants, what our soul needs. It gets trapped, it gets stuck, it gets stored. So we want to find ways to practice noticing what is a yes and what is a no. Pause, pull back, physical scan. Do I feel safe to say no in this moment? And if I don't, why? What is stopping me from feeling safe? What do I need to feel safe to say no? Or yes, for that matter. What am I afraid of? What are the concerns? What might happen? I know, and some of you probably are thinking, that's too much to think about, to do, to consider in the moment. I got time for that. Yeah, well, if you don't make time for it, you're going to make time for a whole lot of other problems if you're not already dealing with them. It's just something to consider. So we've got fight, confront, flight, escape. We've got freeze, disassociate, immobilization, and we have fawning. Saying yes because it's safer than saying no. People pleasing. All of those elements are fawning. So when we're talking about a hell no, we're talking about stepping out of an old trauma response and recognizing where that started, where that came from, why does it exist, for what purpose is this here, where do I not feel safe, and in what way. And if you want some support around that, please feel free to reach out, because another way to work through that is to get some coaching, is to get some support to recognize where is this starting and where did it come from, how can I work around it. Or I can send you our boundaries exercise. So today was a little shorter, a little simpler, but also a complex topic, which is why I'm going to keep it small. Because for some of you, that might have been plenty of information for you to be going, oh my gosh, I'm always dealing with this. First step, now you know. Second step, start noticing when you're doing it. Third step, ask yourself, why do I not feel safe? In what way can I say no now? And if not, What's stopping you? Those of you who watch the replay, I appreciate you watching the replay. Drop a replay in the comments. Those of you that were live, I saw a couple of you. Thank you for showing up live. I hope you have a fantastic 4th of July and really enjoy celebrating your freedoms this entire week. I'll see you next month.